So it's Craig and Jim from the Dive Line. Welcome to another Exhibitor Spotlight. Please introduce yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Sam Craven. I work with a UK charity called the Reef World Foundation, and we are the international coordinator for an initiative called Green Fins. So Green Fins is our initiative that we run with the UN Environment Programme, and it's basically providing environmental standards for the diving and snorkeling industry. So what are the guidelines that we need to follow if we want to make sure that diving is done sustainably? So we want to make sure that the sustainable habits that we have are as commonplace as the safety habits. And that's all in aid of protecting coral reefs for the future. So the more that we can reduce our environmental impacts on coral reefs, even if they aren't the major cause of their decline, the stronger, the more resilient they're going to be to climate change. So we're exhibiting at Scuba.Digital to try and spread this message, to raise people's awareness of the Green Fins practices, and to invite divers to start figuring out what are the little things that we can all do before a dive, before we even leave the country, right up to when we're in the water and diving over these amazing ecosystems. We're exhibiting at Scuba.Digital because we want to spread the message of Green Fins globally and engage other divers to be able to dive more sustainably and protect coral reefs. We're also really excited that we're going to be hosting a session with some of our partners in the UN environment that's going to be exploring how the pandemic has affected the sustainable diving or tourism industry and what's in store for the future of green diving. So yeah, really excited about that. We invite everyone to come and join us.
So how has the charity been managing with COVID-19?
I think like the whole world, it has affected our work. I start by saying we're quite lucky. Our team is sort of split between the UK and Southeast Asia. So we've got elements of remote working already. So that wasn't so much of a shock for the team and our work. But obviously the field work that we do, we go and we work with governments to implement Green Fins. So for example, we've had to postpone launching Green Fins in Japan and in Guam. So hopefully we'll do that when we start opening up again. We were on a path to sort of improving the charity's digital presence anyway, like that had already started. And then of course, COVID has just completely catalyzed that and accelerated it. So it's been exciting to actually shift focus a little bit, get used to being at home all the time, and yeah, see what we can do to spread these messages, because tourism is going to come back. I mean, you guys must feel it. I do. I can't wait to go somewhere else at this point, even if it's just for a day. So I really believe when diving starts happening again, you know, there's a lot of us that are gasping for compressed air. So when we do get back in the water, what can we do to make sure that we can keep going back and visiting reefs for the future?
How does sustainable diving actually protect a reef?
That's a really good question. I think it can be really hard as a single diver to even understand what impacts that you're having. And from an operator's point of view as well, you know, we're operating right by the coast, often in tropical countries, and have coral reefs around them. So we need to be thinking about what are the risks to the environment that we pose just by simply doing our daily things, you know. The Green Fins Code of Conduct is a list of 15 best practices for above and below the water. So what do we have to be mindful of to make sure that we're not adding to the burden that coral reefs are already facing? Because the waters are warming and they're bleaching, the waters are getting more acidic, and those are all linked to climate change. Ocean acidification is actually eroding the skeletons of reefs, it's making them weaker. So we need to be aware of an errant fin kick breaking a piece of coral doesn't mean a lot to us, but when you consider there are 20 million scuba divers certified each year, except maybe 2020, there's like 1 million new divers certified. So it is our collective impact that can sort of erode the health of a reef. And it's not only important for the dive businesses. If you have a healthy reef, you're going to have a much more healthy business, right? But also to us divers who have fallen in love with this ecosystem, we want to see it more, we're completely captivated by it, and maybe we want future divers to be able to see it as well. So it's not tackling climate change and the thing on coral reefs at a global scale. That seems really intangible. How do you even start, you know, as just you and me? But what we can do is make sure that we're not adding to all the different balls that reefs are already juggling. So it's not just our fin, it's the fin of the 12 other divers that are diving with that dive shop today, and then over the week, over the month, over the year. So we're making sure that each of us are not adding to the cumulative impact that comes when we want to dive. We don't want to stop diving.
So what are some of the things that divers can do to become more sustainable then?
I think an important one, and we're talking about sort of business recovery with COVID, I think it's putting your money where your mouth is in terms of choosing operators that have values that are aligned with yours when it comes to how you want to interact with a reef. So Greenfin's members is one way to tell that. We really encourage people to book with them, but there are other labels out there that people can have a look at. And I think, when you're diving by yourself, like looking at your own practices, make sure your hoses are clipped in, so they're not dragging around. That saves you money on, your equipment repair as well, but it means that you're not touching the reef. It means working on your buoyancy to make sure that, your fins are up and away from the reef. That's the most common way that people can contact the reef. It means resisting the urge to touch things or manipulate them. It might even mean, tipping your dive guide because they helped correct your position to protect reefs, rather than the dive guide who breaks something to manipulate something because they think that's what you want for a photo or whatever. So, the list is very long. What's exciting is that we have this platform with Scuba.Digital to start sharing this even wider. And also in the coming months, we're going to be launching a Greenfin's Diver e-course, which is going to take you through step by step, before, during, and after a dive. What are the little changes that you can make to make sure you're having a net positive effect with diving rather than anything that's potentially negative to the environment?
So you just mentioned one there, but what developments does Reef World have in the pipeline to help the dive industry become more sustainable?
We've already got the dive guide e-course. So the diver course will sort of add the other side of that. So the dive guides and the divers can work together to make sure, like, each time they're going out, they're doing that in a way that doesn't impact the environment as much. Through our work with government, they work directly with dive operators in their countries to assess their compliance to the code of conduct, to give solutions and tools so that they can keep on improving. But I'm sure, everyone understands it can be fairly slow to work through the government process, even though that's long-term sustainable. And we want to be able to get these messages out to people in a much more global context. So we're going to be developing a digital membership for operators whose governments haven't adopted Greenfins yet. So there's going to be another route that people can take to make sure that they've got the guidance, the tools, and the solutions. It's not just pointing out what are you doing wrong, but how can you improve, and what are the things that you need to make sure that you're influencing your operation.
Well, that all sounds fantastic, and it sounds like a brilliant charity as well. So how do people contact you, Sam?
They can find Greenfins on social media. So Facebook, Instagram is probably the most active for it. The website greenfins.net is where people can find the dive guide course and also a list of members per country. So members are operators that are already on the sustainability journey. We all have to start somewhere. And we're looking for progress, not perfection. But if people want the creme de la creme, we've also got a global top 10 list. So those are the ones, the operators that are performing the best when it comes to environmental standards.
Excellent. Well, as divers, Jim and I obviously encourage every other diver to have a look at your website and see what they can do to dive more sustainably. We hope that you have a great show, and thank you very much for coming and joining us.